The first thing that I want to do is I want to wrap up the comment I started discussing last week um, with a bunch of so-called Catholic arguments against astrology. I want to kind of tie that up with a bow so that we can move on from that, because something that I have really been thinking about over the past week is this concept of the Christian almanac, and really just how God is pointing to us, showing us where to look through astrology, through the stars. The more that I have read, the more that I have dug in as a result of comments like these, it just really has fortified my resolve more and more. And so let's go ahead and just dive right in. I am going to refute this comment. I'm going to tell you why it is not a strong argument, and I'm going to tell you where to look instead. And that way, as you are growing in your faith as a Catholic, you can really step into this beautiful legacy that we have in the Roman Catholic tradition, which is the intellectual tradition of the Catholic Church. And, a joke that I kind of like to tell, I don't know if it's super nice, but I say that Catholicism is like Christianity for smart people, right? And so it is kind of a requirement that you're willing to look at the primary sources. And, as we find that so many Christians, when they end up looking at the early church fathers, convert to, and the great theologians of old end up converting to Catholicism, because the primary sources really just, they don't lie, right? Like eyewitness accounts don't lie. And it's just really, really important that we as intellectuals are willing to look at those primary sources. Okay, so that was a big introduction into a pretty silly comment that was derived almost exclusively from Chatgpt. And so I'm going to go over this and I'm going to tell you why this is wrong. Last video, when I talked about St. Albert the Great, and we went over we went over Speculum Astronomiae by St. Albert the Great. We discussed number 2 and why non-predictive astrology is not a modern rebranding. And we also talked about a couple of other things. So Aquinas here in the Summa Theologica 2.2, question 95, answer 5, article 5, does not condemn natal astrology as a demonic divination. If you go and read that article, which I highly recommend you do, don't take my word for it. Go and read it. You will see that natal astrology is not even mentioned. And what's condemned as demonic divination is specific predictions regarding the future. Okay, that is what's condemned as demonic divinations. So she quoted me when I said that the list of magisterial condemnations against astrology does not go on and on. And so she said that I might not be familiar with the extent of this material, which is hilarious because I wrote the book on it. So then she cites 3 councils. She cites Laodicea, the Council of Toledo, and the Council of Braga. Here's the problem, and this is why we need to be educated and intellectual Catholics and not go to ChatGPT for our answers. These 3 councils are regional councils. They are not ecumenical councils, which would make them magisterially binding. These are not magisterially binding councils. These are regional councils, okay? Do they have a treasure trove of theological knowledge and wealth and wisdom? Yes, they do. But they are not the magisterium of the Catholic Church. They do not have the teaching authority of the Universal Church. There are 21 ecumenical and magisterial councils. I have them all here in a list. I've printed them out, okay? The reason why you see them all highlighted is because I have gone over every single one of these councils. I have gone through the documents of all of the 21 magisterial councils of the Catholic Church. And guess how many of them mention astrology, even mention it? 0. None of them. So the list of condemnations, magisterial condemnations against astrology, does not go on and on. Okay, she says the cornerstone of the Vatican was placed based on the instructions of astrologers. Okay, based on the horoscope published in 1552, 46 years after the ceremony. Okay, so she basically goes on to say, absent primary sources, this remains a myth, not a historical fact. Let me tell you something, and this is why we need to go to school, okay? This is why it's really important for Catholics to be intellectuals, to be intelligent, and to go to school. Everyone who's been to school knows that a first-hand account, the account of a direct witness, of an event, even if it was written 46 years later, is a primary source. Okay, think about how long after the death of Jesus the Gospels were written. Decades. Okay, decades, probably around 46 years. Okay, that is a primary source. We have primary sources that say that the cornerstone of the Vatican was placed based on the instructions of astrologers. You need to be intelligent as Catholics, okay? The church's rejection is not because astrology is pagan, but because it usurps knowledge and power over human destiny. Yes, predictive astrology does. Okay, so that's another comment. And again, the reason why I'm going through all of these, again, is because you're going to see a lot of these online, and I want you to be smarter than this, okay? Council of Trent, prohibition of books claiming certainty and predictions. Yes. Yes. Pope Sixtus condemned all judicial astrology. Pope John Paul II discusses the esoteric superstition and astrological speculations. St. John Paul II did mention it, but it was not a condemnation of astrology necessarily. Pope Benedict XVI said, when he said this in Spe Salvi, he was quoting a saint and essentially saying that it was an enlightened perspective that he hadn't thought of before. But I recommended that this commenter actually read the infancy narratives by Pope Benedict XVI, and specifically that they read chapter 5, because that's where Pope Benedict XVI discusses the Magi, and he discusses them as astrologers, and he does not condemn them. So I highly recommend that you go into that as well. All divination, including astrology, is rejected. Yes. And I want you to note too that any magisterial condemnation of astrology condemns it within the context of predictions. Okay. Astrology is never mentioned without the sin of prediction also being mentioned. Okay. Okay. It is, I mean, a lot of this is weak evidence because very little of this is a continuation of all of these. Did I skip one? Maybe it was out of order. Very little of this is magisterially binding. So yes, because she brought up these regional councils. And then, so I must have missed this. She goes through the early church fathers who all within a period of about, they lived all within a period of about 300 years, and they all condemned astrology. So the early church fathers, they are, again, another wealth of theological knowledge, and they really show us what the early church taught during the time, during the sort of the season of the church immediately after the death of Christ. Okay, the early church fathers really set a foundation for us regarding what the church believed. Their teachings, though, are not universally binding. Okay, they are not magisterially binding on Catholics unless the Catholic Church continues to teach what they taught today. Okay, and so you'll see a lot of the early church fathers, a lot of the patristics, as we like to call them, they will condemn astrology, but all of the medieval, not all, a lot of the medieval and Renaissance theologians, doctors of the church, endorse non-predictive astrology. And so it's like you put up St. Augustine up against Thomas Aquinas. It's like, what, like there's, you can't say that one is more valuable than the other. You can't put St. Basil the Great up against St. Albert the Great, right? Like what matters is the development of doctrine over time and what the magisterium says now, or what it has said more recently. And what it says now is that predictive astrology is to be condemned. Okay. I had skipped that, so I apologize. And then I just wanted to, okay, we already talked about that. Yep, I had skipped a bunch for some reason. Okay, I think I have covered this, because I covered this number 6 in the last comment. And then the Magi practice astrology. I mean, there's no argument for that. I literally wrote the book on it. And the reason why, so there were basically 4 options. It could be, I'll go through this very quickly. It could be a miraculous phenomenon, the star. It could have been a comet. It could have been a supernova, or it could have been an astrological event. Okay. The reason why, so miraculous event, we can set that to the side because number 1, there's really no way of knowing. And number 2, because In Luke, he was very specific regarding it being an angel that led the shepherds to Christ. And there's no indication of a miraculous event. Other people, other witnesses during the time of Christ didn't see this miraculous event. So was it visible only to the Magi? Basically, what we're doing in that sense, by her saying like it was a miraculous star, she's actually reading her interpretation into the narrative, because it doesn't actually say it was a miraculous star. It just said they saw the star at its rising, right? Which is an astrological indication. It couldn't have been a supernova because there's no supernovas recorded during that time. Halley's Comet did pass over. It was a few years earlier than we think Jesus was born. But the problem is the interpretation of the comet, right? And comets tended to mean doom and gloom, not, good tidings of great joy. And so because the witnessing of the event and the interpretation of the event was necessary, because whatever the star was, it told them to leave their homeland and go find the king of the Jews. That's what leads us to believe it was an astrological conjunction. And that evidence is supported by so many theologians, including Benedict XVI in the infancy narratives. And so anyways, I discuss this at length in my book, Magi from the East, which is available on Amazon. So then when you see, so she goes, what's happening here is a bait and switch, emotional, compelling crime pain narrative hook. When you see like 5 hyphens in a sentence like that, it's guaranteed that this response is a Chatgpt response. And Chatgpt, what it will do is it will confirm your own suspicions, right? Like it will, what's the word? There's a psychological term. Self-fulfilling prophecy. It will confirm your own, it will fulfill your own narrative and confirm it will confirm your own biases, okay? Because it wants you to keep using it. I will talk to you all later. Bye, everyone.